First of all, thank you, Sanya, for having me talk about patents. There's nothing I like doing better. So I'm Shalini Sitaraman Menezes. In a different lifetime, I used to be a physics professor, and then I got interested in how scientists and technologists should protect their innovation, and the whole process of research and development and protecting their inventions and discoveries was fascinating. So I moved into IP law because I said, okay, now with this background of physics, I can now help scientists protect their innovations. And then from there, I realized that we need to help these creators, these innovators, protect their innovation and be able to make money off of it and treat it like an asset. So my current interest is in finance. So I'm a technologist turned IP lawyer turned finance professional where I help with valuation and monetization of intellectual property. And of course, everything from the concept of idea to it being commoditized and sold as an asset. I'm interested in every step of the way of intellectual property.
Why storytelling?
Why not storytelling? Right? It is the first medium, like as a child, if you go back to when you were a child, the first medium of connecting with your parents or your grandparents was that tell me a story or read me a story. And I used to pester everyone around me saying, story, tell me a story, read me a story. And I would pick up crumpled newspapers from the bin and say, here, there's a story in this. And, that fascination for story still didn't leave me. And I got really good at writing because of that, because I started writing out my thoughts and my stories. And I even taught creative writing for a few semesters to college students. And I have a blog and everything. And then I thought, why should there be this? And I don't like jargon in anything, in academia, in law. You can't get a point across if you are sitting behind this huge wall of jargon. And the other person cannot hear you because they don't speak your language. And so the easiest way to get your message across is speak the language of your audience. And that language, universal language, is stories. So, and I realized that you simplified, everything can be simplified, right? Richard Feynman, who is one of my favorite physicists, says you want to learn something, teach it to a 5-year-old. Or, okay, fifth grader. If it's advanced physics, teach it to a fifth grader. And I realized that that is the thing. I could teach it to my children when they were young, IP concepts. And then they started talking about it. And I said, hey, you know what? Let's bring this to people, to adults who don't speak that language of legal and technical. And it's working out really well because I get a lot of follow-up questions on the videos I make, and they're short videos, right? You can't, if it's a new concept, you don't want to throw too much at your audience also. You have to keep it engaging enough, simple enough, anecdotal enough, like have a product that you see every day, like a Rubik's Cube or a jelly bean that you eat. So you keep it to very simple stuff that they identify with, and they're going to listen to you because they know what that thing is. If you talk about drones and aerospace engineering, nobody's going to want to listen to you because very few people specialize in that. So storytelling has a lot of power in every aspect of human life. And I think that it has impacted the way I communicate with the rest of the world. And I'm getting a lot of positive feedback on that storytelling just because a lot of people are understanding what they need to protect. Like you can't protect what you don't know enough about. So that enlightenment, that I eureka moment is coming around.
How can people interested in innovating in patents learn from you?
So I have a podcast where I interview other founders, investors, mentors, people who help founders along on their journey. So that is a more personal, that is also comes from my love for stories because I wanted to understand a lot about the founder and startup ecosystem. So I started having investors and founders over to understand the language. And so it's more of their stories than of mine. But you will still be amazed at the kind of experiences people have had who come on the podcast. I've had the opportunity, the honor of interviewing some amazing folk. For my content, I think you can find me on YouTube, under Patented Network. You can find me on LinkedIn. I don't follow a strict approach that I'm going to talk about patents this week, copyrights this week. My I'm largely doing video content these days because there is so much of AI generated content, written content, that anything that I write may get drowned in that AI generated content sea of that. And I also tend to write a little flowery, so it sounds like it is AI generated, even though it is not. So I started doing a lot of video posts these days, once a day, where it's quick, it's 1.5 minutes, it gives you an insight into, oh, I can do this with my design, oh, I can do this with my copyright, I can do that with my trademark. So it's just nuggets, and there's no particular order, so you're not missing out on anything. And I do also recycle content, make new videos with the same content, just for new audience who've come along, or that I have forgotten I've already made content. So video content is my current thing, and you can just start anywhere you like. Also, you can leave comments on my post saying, I do get people who say that, can you do a next post on this? Can you do a post explaining this? That you said this, can you explain that? So I do entertain those requests as well.
What is your advice for migrants in Europe wanting to patent?
Patenting for any demographic is, first of all, if you're doing that, if you've researched something and you want to patent it, you have my utmost respect, because it is not an easy thing to come up with something original, right? The requirements for patenting are that it has to be novel, it has to be non-obvious to a person who is skilled in that art, and of course it has to have commercial applicability. So if you have found something, or you want to patent something that is new and non-obvious, you have my utmost respect. And patenting for any group itself is a difficult, long and difficult process. It is, of course, a lot of countries are working on making it speedier and easier, but it is still heavy, or can be heavy on your pocket if you're not with a research institute or an employer. So for migrants, there is the added stress of having their residency, or having to make a life in a new country, and having to provide for their family and themselves in a new country. So there are all these other added stresses. I know that because I have lived as an immigrant in a different country for several years. So I know the stress that can go with it. But the patenting process doesn't change whether you are a citizen or you're a migrant. So the main thing is you have to see what your employment contract states. Sometimes if you are in that position and your job requires to be inventing something, researching something, then that patent is going to be owned by your employer. If it is not connected to your employment, for example, if I am a physics professor, but I have developed a way of cooking soup that is novel and non-obvious. Now that soup has nothing to do with my physics job, so I can apply for it on my own dime and in my own name. But if the invention is relating to, say, a microwave device or a laser device for which I am a physics professor, then I would have to have my university or my employer be the applicant, be the owner. So in a patent, you have two parties. One is the inventor and one is the applicant. The applicant is the person who is paying the bills, and the patent is in his name, his or her name, usually the company or the research institute. And you will be named as an inventor. And if it has nothing to do with your job, if it has nothing to do with what your employment contract says, then it won't come under the purview of that employer. You can do it on your own. So your first step should be to see, we all think our children are the prettiest and the most talented and the ones with the most potential. And it is the same with our inventions. So even though you think that your invention is the first of its kind and groundbreaking, you can do a search. European Patent Office, EPO, has a very user-friendly search engine. You can search using keywords, And it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to be a scientist. You can just type in. So, for example, I was talking about the soup example. I can say soup or beverage and nutritional beverage and so on, and conduct a search. You can also search on Google Patents, just like how you have a Google search engine. You have a Google Patents search engine, which is specific for patents, and they have patents from all the European countries and US and Canada and Japan, Korea, and so on. So you can search to see who else in the world is working on something similar. And I would advise that if you are doing a search on your own, please use synonyms, use a dictionary and use similar words, because we tend to forget that a pair of spectacles can also be called as glasses. It can also be called as lenses. There are multiple names for the same thing. So do a search with all the synonyms to make it a comprehensive search. Once you have searched and you find that you really are the owner of a novel and non-obvious invention, then you should speak to a patent attorney. Uh, just because drafting the patent requires a particular knowledge of technical and legal both, and it has to be, your information has to be presented to the patent officer in a manner that they are used to receiving and that they can understand. And think of it as building a fence around your land, right? You have a piece of land that you own. You want to build a fence around it. If you build your fence too close to the center, then you are leaving the rest of your land to encroachers, to poachers. If you build your fence outside of the compound, then you are building into your neighbor's property and you are disturbing them, right? So it has to be exactly at that perimeter of your land. And that is what a patent attorney will help you do. They will make sure that your fence is exactly at your invention, not too broad that is going into other people's inventions, and not so narrow that you're giving a lot of it away to encroachers.